Is now a good time to buy real estate? Well, as a real estate agent, I should be saying yes. But the real answer is it depends. First things first, there's no perfect time to buy real estate. And anyone that tells you otherwise is making things up. They're guessing because none of us have a crystal ball. And timing the market, whether it's stocks or real estate, is futile because we can't predict the future. So the answer lies in, is it the right time for you as an individual to buy, whether it's your first condo or your first house? So in this video, I want to break some things down to help you evaluate that decision. While I can't tell you where housing prices are going to be a month from now or a year from now, or where mortgage rates are going to be tomorrow, what I can tell you is that based on historical data over a long period of time, housing prices and rents tend to go up. With that said, there may be a good time for you to buy, and there may be a less good time for you to buy. So you need to understand your current situation, your goals, and also your alternatives. So in this video, I want to look at a few factors that might help you make a decision about whether now is a good time for you to buy as opposed to continuing to rent. First things first, if you've been renting for a while and you've noticed that every time you get a lease renewal letter, the offered rent is higher, that trend is likely to stay the same. Rents usually don't decline, barring some cataclysmic economic downturn. So if your rent has been going up, you can probably estimate where it's going to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, just looking at historical averages for rent increases, whether it's your own personal rent increases or the averages for the city you live in. Number one, are you comfortable with where your rent is today? And if you project it out 3 to 5 years, are you comfortable staying a renter in the town you're currently residing in? Number two, have you saved up a sufficient amount that can fund a down payment and closing costs to purchase your first condo or single family home? Of course, the caveat being down payment can be as little as 3.5% with an FHA loan. You can even get a conventional mortgage for as little as 5% down. Obviously, speak to a loan officer to get more information. So down payment doesn't have to be the 20% that some people have in their minds, but obviously the higher the down payment, the lower your monthly payment will be. Speaking of monthly payment, it's important to understand what your approximate cost would be if you buy and then compare it to your cost today as a renter. So as a renter, obviously you have your monthly rent and you have utilities that you pay out of pocket. But when you buy a place, your costs are kind of divided among different categories. There's going to be the principal and interest payment to the bank, and that's going to depend on the mortgage rate that you lock in. There's going to be property taxes. If it's a condo or a townhouse, there's going to be HOA fees. There's also going to be utilities. Typically, you pay more in utility expenses as a homeowner than you do as a renter, right? Depending on obviously your arrangement. So there's a lot of factors to consider, but it's important to understand approximately what your cost would be before you can make a decision whether now is the right time to buy or if you just renew your lease for another year. Next point to consider. Do you have a good job with stable income, and do you have good credit? Because if the answer is yes to both of those things, you're likely to be able to not only qualify for a mortgage, but get a competitive rate. And the fourth point is, are you expecting a life change, or has there been a life change where you need to move? Whether it's because you changed jobs, or now you have to commute to the office 5 days a week and you need a shorter commute, or maybe you're starting a family and you need more space. Maybe there's certain neighborhood amenities that you now require, like daycare. All these things should be taken into account. And the other important factor is, do you plan to stick around in a particular town or city for at least a few years? Because if you're planning to move in a year, probably not a good time to buy. So I would look at it holistically, and only you can come up with the answer, right? Not some expert online or on television, right? Because they can speak on a macro level, and even then they're guessing, but only you can determine if it's the right time to buy for you based on your own situation. And as you do this analysis for yourself, one important thing to keep in mind is that most people that buy a place typically lock in a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which means that your principal and interest component of your monthly overhead, which is going to be the biggest bulk of your housing expense, is going to be fixed unless you refinance. And by the way, if rates were to come down enough, a lot of people will start to refinance, right? Which means you would actually lower your monthly overhead, which cannot be said for someone who's a renter, right? Typically, your lease renewal rate will go up, not down. With a mortgage, you're fixing the biggest part of your expense, which is the principal and interest payment to the bank. Now, your property taxes will typically go up a little bit every year. And if you buy a condo, your HOA fees will typically rise. But those are smaller as a percentage of your monthly overhead than your principal and interest payments. So that's an important difference between renting and buying. Now, after you've done your analysis, if everything is pointing towards this might be a good time for me to buy, what's next? Well, the logical next step is to find a great local agent, someone who is experienced and knows the market you are looking in, and that agent can help guide you through the whole process. I would start with speaking with the agent about understanding the local market, understanding how competitive it is, pricing, how to structure an offer, what to expect in a multiple offer situation, and also what to expect with the actual purchase process, right? Because it's a long process. The entire thing could be stressful and intimidating, especially if you're a first-time buyer. So it's vital to find someone who is experienced, knowledgeable, and responsive in the market you're looking in. And once you find a great agent, that agent most likely has a roster of other real estate professionals that you're going to need on your journey. That could include lawyers, lenders, home inspectors, contractors, and other people involved. So you don't have to stress over finding a good lawyer for attorney review, or a good inspector for the home inspection, or a good lender to get a mortgage. So I think the first key step is to find a great local realtor. Okay, so the last point I want to mention is about timing. If you decide that it is the right time for you to buy and you've partnered with a great local agent, how do you time it correctly if you are renting? Well, it is important to know that a typical transaction will take roughly 45 days from contract date to closing. Now, before you get under contract, at least in New Jersey, you go through something called attorney review, which is when your offer is accepted and attorneys from both sides are introduced. That could take anywhere from 1 business day to a week. I've actually seen it take more than a week. So I would say budget about up to 2 months from when you make an offer and it's accepted to when you close, because inevitably there are delays with the purchase process and different deals can be delayed for different reasons. But I would budget about 2 months. And keep in mind, in a competitive market, it might take you a while to even get an offer accepted. Right? You might need to make multiple offers before something is accepted. So if your lease is about to expire a month from now, you may not have enough time to close. Chances are you don't have enough time to close before your lease expires. So I would say definitely plan well ahead. I would say give yourself at least a few months to start looking, to start making offers, and hopefully if you get something accepted, to actually go through the entire process and get to the closing table. So I would say reach out to your landlord or property management company, find out if A, there's an early termination fee, B, if there's an opportunity to go month to month if your lease expires, and C, if you do renew your lease, is there an option to renew for a shorter duration than 12 months? Because you really want to have that information up front before you start actively looking. So timing is important. If you're trying to figure out if buying now is right for you and you have questions about the process or the analysis, feel free to drop me a line and reach out.